Well, he's a great actor. He's a great patriot, and he's a good friend of mine. He's had his own successful long-running TV show and has starred pretty much as Tom Hanks' only friend in a major motion picture. Unfortunately, Gary Sinise couldn't be here today, and instead we were able to get Nick Searcy. Nick, that's about the only joke you're going to get from me today. We're old friends. We go back a long way.
That's right.
And it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Good to see you again, Bill. Yeah.
Good to see you again, too. You have produced a movie called Capital Punishment, which opens on Thanksgiving. And we set enough time aside for us to be able to get into this a little bit more deeply than maybe just most of these kind of interviews.
Yeah.
So we'll start at the beginning. You were there, weren't you?
Yeah. I went on January 6th to Washington, not with the intention of making a movie, but just because I'm a great American. And I just kind of walked around and made some little iPhone movies, just like a tourist. Mm-hmm. And when I got home and watched the media, watched the television, I didn't see anything like what I had experienced. I didn't see any of the violence. I didn't see anything. I saw a lot of people praying and singing and saying saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And most of them were my age or older. So I don't know what we were armed with other than maybe polygrip and, some blood pressure medicine or something. So, this idea of this being a violent armed insurrection was just completely not what I saw. So we decided to make a movie and explore that and see why there was such a disparity between what the media was saying and what I experienced.
Yeah, the subtitle of your movie, which is very appropriately called Capital Punishment, is everything you've been told is a lie. Mm-hmm. Imagine my surprise. So look, let's back up a little bit before the actual event. I've referred to the night of November 4th, 2020, as a sneak attack, basically a Pearl Harbor, was a sneak attack by people that have no interest in self-government, no interest in integrity, no interest in anything. As it turns out, on election night that night, you and I were in the same place. We were over at Daily Wire, weren't we?
Yes, we were.
Watching the results.
Yeah.
Watching the results coming in. And then somewhere in the middle of this Trump rolling victory, we started getting a delay. We heard that, the one major location in Atlanta is late reporting because there's been a burst water main. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then next thing you know, they're holding us for hours and hours and hours. They're holding us so long they finally go to me on camera. That's how desperate they got. And in the middle of this evening, we discovered that the voting had simply stopped. The counting of the voting had stopped. I was on the air with Ben, and when President Trump came on and said something's going on, mm-hmm. and Ben said, "Look, he's got no business saying that. He doesn't have any evidence." And I said, "Ben, they stopped counting in 5 states.
Yeah,
the evidence is right in front of us." So this entire January 6th protest was predicated on the idea that the media had been lying to us, had been continually lying to us, that no one was investigating it, no one was looking into it, no one was doing anything, and a lot of people, including you, went to Washington to show that this isn't okay and we want some answers.
Right. I mean, they basically rammed it down everybody's throat and said, if you object to this, you are anti-American or you are some sort of a seditionist. When in fact, it's like if I was on the other side and somebody contested the fact that the election was stolen and that my mm-hmm. side had stolen it, I would want to prove that I didn't.
Me too.
Just to
and
unify America.
And it should be fairly easy to do.
Yeah.
And the fact that no one's looking into this is in itself the biggest form of evidence. So you've got an awful lot of Americans. I know a number of them that went there. Go to Washington. I wasn't there. The next day or so, or a day or the day after, certainly, I think it was the next day, I wake up and I hear about this big insurrection and storming the Capitol and all the rest of it. And I got on my morning show and basically fell into the trap of repeating what I had heard through the news.
Right.
And I said, this is a gigantic mistake. They're never, ever going to let us hear the end of this. This business of just going in and kicking in windows at the Capitol and looting the place was not a good idea. But as I watched the trailer for your movie, and as I heard from other people who were there saying, That's nothing like what happened, Bill. This is a big, 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 deep story underneath this. So in your trailer, for example, there's a memorable line where somebody says, "I remember you from Oregon," or something, somebody from Antifa and so on. Mm-hmm. Did you see evidence of people there who were dressed as Trump supporters who clearly weren't?
Yes, we have footage in the movie of them changing clothes in the bushes, them pulling things over their Trump gear and changing clothes. And two things about that, what you just said. In the movie, we show that the first breach of the Capitol, the first breaking of the windows, occurred before Trump's speech even ended. It wasn't the people that were over there listening to him. So who was it? And the second point about that is that we talked to a guy named Chris Barron, who you may know, and he made this point that, like, what was happening in the Capitol at that moment was exactly what everybody was there wanted to happen. Ted Cruz was standing up and challenging the results. Josh Hawley was challenging the results. No one that was there on that day who believed the election was stolen wanted to stop that process. So the people who did what they did by breaking in actually went against the wishes of everybody that was there.
Right. We just wanted an answer.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this whole thing happens. There's so much to talk about here. Just going through what I remember from your trailer. There are two things in that trailer that just made my blood run. Well, most of it made my blood boil, but two moments made my blood actually kind of run cold. One of them was you're talking to somebody who's there on the protest, walking in, just explaining why she's there and what she's doing, and you find out that her name is Ashley Babbitt. And then there's another very quick shot in your film that is a remarkably clear and close picture of somebody with a handgun firing that weapon, somebody in a suit. For all of us that look at this travesty, this is the part that's the hardest to take on a visceral level. Did you know Ashley Babbitt before you made the movie?
No, I did not.
Did you get a chance to talk to her before you on the day, or were you able to recover that footage afterwards?
We got that footage from somewhere else, but her husband Aaron is interviewed extensively in the film, and he talks about his experience of that day and what she went through, and we show the entire 2-minute video of her killing, her murder. I call it a murder. And the thing that husband called it an execution, didn't he? Yes, he did. And
he's
when you look at the video, it's hard not to think that, because when the gun comes up, when Officer Byrd brings that gun up, it is up for about 35 or 40 seconds. It's up before Ashley Babbitt is there. And so that makes me think, what's going on here? He was there ready to shoot somebody, even though he didn't know who was coming through the window yet. So
and there were a lot of problems with this guy in the past, right? In terms of professional conduct, he's not exactly a model police officer.
Right. And there's just so many questions about that. And the way the media does everything, they slam shut the book on that. No, this has been decided. He didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing to see here. If you say anything against that, then, you're lying. And, they just sort of close the book on everything before it's investigated. Same way they did the election.
Let me ask you a quick question about the video that you just mentioned, where you've got like 2 minutes before Ashley was shot. We've just, as we record this, just a couple of days ago, had I think something that relieved and surprised many of us. We had an actual, honest to God, fair verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Yeah. Now, in that particular case, there is video of Rittenhouse essentially doing his level best to run away from these people who are chasing him down. And anybody who looks at that video could look at it and say, this guy is not what the narrative is making him. He's not walking down the street just gunning down people. He's trying to get away, and he's defending his life. In the video in your movie, is it possible to get a sense that not only was there really no real threat to these agents, but that Ashley specifically was not doing anything threatening?
Absolutely. She was not armed. There was nothing in her hands. And she stuck her head through the window, and she was shot.
Didn't try to climb through, nothing, no weapon, you said, nothing, no threats, just wanted some answers or looking in there and bang.
I'm not sure. That part of the video is obscured, but, seeing where she was exactly at the moment the trigger was pulled. But
Yep.
my understanding was that she had her hands on the window, and Aaron Babbitt, her husband, talks about how the use of force continuum was not followed by that officer, and he just shot her. It's like, there are many steps before you go to deadly force.
Yes.
There's verbalization, there's warning, there's
warning,
and
none of that, huh?
None of that happened. No.
Okay, so let me. Would you think this is a loaded term, and you've obviously done the research on it and spent a lot of time on this. Is it fair to call this whole thing a false flag operation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily use that terminology just because it has a lot of meanings that I may or may not understand. But what I call it was a setup, and that this whatever this was planned. There's too many fishy things about the whole thing. The fact that there was no media coverage of anything except the Capitol on that day. The fact that there was no visible police presence anywhere except at the Capitol on that day when they knew that this huge demonstration was coming. And also the fact that there were no counter protests on that day. You almost never have any sort of a Trump rally where you don't have a visible counter protest. And the reason there was not a visible counter protest that day was that they had infiltrated. They had dressed as Trump supporters and went in there to cause trouble. And we have a lot of footage of people like that is presented in the film.
So the immediate aftermath of this, and you said you didn't go there to make a movie, and I assume just like everybody else, you woke up the next day and heard this story. But unlike many of us, you were actually there, actually saw what happened.
Yeah.
This has been this event that they've created and this narrative that they've created out of the events of January 6th have been used as a bludgeon, and it has set so deep into the pop culture now that this is the evidence that anybody who opposes Donald Trump, Republicans, conservatives, or whatever, immediately goes to, oh, you're just a bunch of violent murderers. And,
right.
and this is after, of course, year of the Black Lives Matter riots and all of that. No. It all comes down to January 6th. Nancy Pelosi is saying it's the greatest threat to our democracy, since the Civil War, whoever made that ridiculous comment. Clearly, a narrative was created, and one of the points you seem to be making is that a lot of the elements of that narrative were in place before the actual event happened.
Yeah, there were many things that could have been done that would have prevented any of this. Even President Trump had said, we should call in the National Guard. Pelosi shut that down. She said,
"Yeah, why did she do that?"
Well, because my personal opinion,
because they needed an incident, right?
Right. And my personal opinion is, and I'm allowed to have an opinion. I think that they wanted something worse than this. I think they wanted a lot of violence. And if you see what's now coming out about the death of Rosanne Boland, who died in the tunnel, that what was going on in that tunnel was really a pitched battle that was instigated by the Capitol Police. And there were a lot of people being hurt in that tunnel, and she was actually beaten to death. There's now video of it. So I think that really what was being orchestrated was something more like, say, the color revolution in the Ukraine, where more than 100 people died, and they used that to really shut down the whole country. And I think that's what they were trying to do. They wanted an incident that was so bad that they could say, all of these Trump supporters are racist, violent, hateful people that need to be treated like terrorists, and we've got to disarm them all because they're all too dangerous.
And don't pay too much attention to the actual election results now that we have this spectacular distraction, right?
Exactly.
I mean, once the events happened, it was no longer about whether or not the people there had a justifiable reason to petition the government as guaranteed by their First Amendment rights.
That's right.
Once January 6th happened, all of the focus went away from the countless irregularities onto this coup attempt where a president who lost the election is now basically trying to foment a insurrection in order to steal his way back into power.
And look at what happened on the day itself. What was happening in the Senate, in the chambers, in the Capitol building, was that the election was being challenged. After the break-in, after the insurrection happened, they shut down that debate and said, we can't afford to do this. It's too dangerous. We're going to certify the election right now today. No more investigating. So who would have wanted that to happen? Not us, not us Trump guys.
The whole thing just reeks. So let me just say something to people who are watching, and maybe you can elaborate on this.
Yeah.
I've spent most of my life trying to debunk conspiracy theories. I'm not a person who's prone to conspiracy theories. When you see something like this and you hear these kind of allegations made, you think, well, but there's no question that the Federal Bureau of Investigation made an attempt to unseat a duly elected president, that they invented evidence that they then took to court to use as reasons to plant this whole Russian collusion story. That actually happened. James Comey actually got on TV, indicted Hillary Clinton for 45 minutes, and then said, we don't think we should press charges. That actually happened. Mm-hmm. All of the things that we, as rational, reasonable people, would say, no, it can't be real. These things actually happened well before January 6th, and they continue to happen. Mm-hmm. And it's a hard thing to come to realize, that's a painful thing to come to realize, that the overwhelming evidence now is that your own government is at war against the American people, and not just the government, aspects and elements of the government, the people like you and I not only admired and respect, people like you play in movies, lawmen, FBI guys, G-men, the untouchables, all of this stuff. To face the idea that this is all this corrupt is a real shock for Americans, and it's a tough and bitter pill to swallow. But that doesn't mean it's not true, does it?
No, I mean, and like you said, you can go back over the past 5 years and you look at the lies. I mean, one after the other, it's been disproven, and they don't care. They never admit it. They just move on to the next lie, and it's been happening over and over and over again. And so there's a man in the movie who says, I'm going to have to come up with some new conspiracy theories because all my old ones keep coming true, and that's really what's happening. I mean, I don't know how many times it has to happen before, we start to see a pattern. They lie until the lie doesn't work anymore, and then they just drop that lie and they move on to the next lie.
Right, and the Rittenhouse case is just the most recent example of this. There's your evidence right in front of your lying eyes, but we're going to tell a story, and we're going to exclude what evidence we need to exclude, cherry pick the little things that we can, string them together in a story, and then just keep telling that story until at least half of the country believes it. Mm-hmm. So Nick, you come back from just going there to go there, and you see this narrative being spun. You see the effect that it has as a weapon from the people who are behind this whole thing. What got you to make this movie? Was it you just couldn't take it anymore?
Well, somebody was, we were talking about it, and I said, this is really an attack on free speech. And we kind of set out to make this kind of, the original title of the movie was The Trouble with Free Speech, because that's what I saw. Mm-hmm. It's an attack on people's ability to say, we don't believe this, we'd like you to prove it to us, right? And as the movie went on, and as we began shooting and talking to people and meeting these people whose doors have been busted down by the FBI, whose 13-year-old daughters have been handcuffed and put on the street. Yeah. They've been treated like drug cartel leaders or serial killers rather than decent Americans who have a different opinion about the government. The more we started to talk to these people, the more I realized that that's really what the movie was about. And so we set out to show people, this is what your government is doing. These are people who didn't go in the building, who didn't do anything violent, and in fact, didn't do anything more than I did. And I say throughout the movie, why am I not being investigated? I haven't done anything any differently than these guys have done. And if the FBI would come after me, it would have made a great ending to the film. We had to make one up because the FBI wouldn't investigate me. But that's why the movie it switched from the trouble with free speech to capital punishment after we kind of learned that that's what the government is doing. They are punishing people, demonizing them, and terrorizing them if they disagree with the government. And it's done intentionally to send a message to others. They're turning neighbors against against each other and saying these people are evil. I mean, there's stuff in the movie about how it's not just the government, but these people's communities have turned against them because the government has basically stigmatized them as racists or white supremacists or violent insurrectionists. And so then the government is then weaponizing the community to go and do the dirty work for them. It's really, really sinister and sick.
Yeah, I think that the reason they didn't come after you is because you're international film and television star Nick Searcy, and that is something you do in a self-deprecating way that makes people who know you love you. But I'm serious about this because of all the things that I see in this movie and all of the things that you're trying to expose, it's the fact that the people that the government are going after are not people who are famous. They're not people who have friends. They're not people who get movies made or distributed. They're just regular people being intimidated and bullied by the government that they went to lawfully and legally protest as guaranteed in their First Amendment rights. It's the little people that are getting hurt by this. They're just regular Americans who went there with a really pure heart, who are the ones who, as you say, are being utterly having the doors kicked down and being treated like, well, I almost said being treated like Muslim terrorists, but they treat Muslim terrorists much better than that.
Right. And, you go back to you mentioned the Rittenhouse case before. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse, there was funds started to help him have a vigorous defense. A lot of these people that are being targeted, they can't spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a legal defense. So what happens to them? They get a court-appointed attorney. And in most cases, the court-appointed attorney is not working for them. He's working for the government. He's trying to get them to take a plea deal. He's coming in and he's saying, if you go to trial, you could face 28 years. But if you take this one felony, you'll do 6 months and you can get on with your life. And they do that so that they can then pile up these plea deals and say, look at all these domestic terrorists that have admitted wrongdoing. They've accepted this plea deal. And now they're convicted felons and they can't vote and they can't own a firearm. So they were basically using this to try to neutralize poor people, middle-class people who disagree with them. And they're doing, like I said, it's a chilling effect. They want everybody to know, if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. We ruined these people. We will ruin you if you do it.
So obviously, the biggest casualty of the day was Ashley Babbitt. Most of the people who went to the demonstration came home and were left alone. You mentioned a significant number of them have been harassed since then. And there are still people sitting in a federal dungeon for trespassing charges a year after this has happened, aren't there?
Yes, they're still there in jail. Julie Kelly at American Greatness is one of the great advocates for them. Her Twitter feed is you shouldn't miss it. I mean, she's telling the truth about what they're doing to these people in these horrible conditions that you would think were happening in Afghanistan or Iran or something, toilets that don't work, solitary confinement with no phone call, bugs all over the mattress.
Sign the paper. Yeah. Sign the paper and we'll make all this end for you.
Exactly right. It's like a KGB sort of, sign this confession before we execute you kind of thing.
Nick, there are times, I had a real bad week 3 weeks ago or so, when I think the raw shame of it, the shame. I don't mean like little shame, hey, that's a shame. I mean just the burden of seeing the United States government doing the kind of things that the United States government was instituted to fight against. It's enough to take your heart out. How many times during the course of this process did you simply just say, I can't believe what I'm seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, we heard it so many times over and over again. Just after a certain time, you begin to go, okay, you get kind of a little bit jaded about it because, okay, we're going to go talk to another person that this happened to and another person. But the reaction that we've been getting from people who, are seeing this film for the first time, you cannot believe that this is going on. You cannot believe that this is happening in America. And I have trouble believing that even Democrats, if they see this film, they cannot possibly think this is the way these people should be treated. And if they do, then they're lost. And I don't know. But I mean, any fair-minded American should be able to look at this film and go, that guy deserved a phone call. The FBI we'd like to talk to you, rather than beating down his door and terrorizing his family.
Yeah, we saw that with, was it James O'Keefe?
Yeah.
I think a week or two ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Knock his door down, handcuff him, throw him against the wall, that kind of thing. All they had to do was knock. He would have said, come on in.
Yeah.
What can I do for you? So tell us about how this film is being released, how people can see it, how they can share it, and what they can do to help.
The film is being released at a website, capitalpunishmentthemovie.com, capital with
on Thanksgiving.
On Thanksgiving Day, and capital with an O because we're clever and, we made a little pun. But capitalpunishmentthemovie.com, and we're releasing it that way. It's almost an experiment in going around the Hollywood machine. I think that's what we have to start doing. We have to build our own sort of Hollywood, and we have to find a way to give the audience direct access to our material rather than having people at Netflix decide what you should see or Amazon or whatever. So if we can make this successful, it can become a model for how movies can be released in the future. And
so this is, you may host it on, or you may at least try to put it on Facebook or on YouTube, but you've got this on your own servers and no one's taken that away.
Right. That westernjournal.com is hosting the film on their servers. And so that way it can't be shut down, hopefully.
So for those of you out there who understand what's going on, people have watched the censorship against me and everybody else, in many cases much worse than what they're doing to me. This isn't something that they can stop. It's not like they can ban it from YouTube or Facebook. But in order for people to see this movie, you are going to have to email your friends with the link that we'll obviously provide here on Facebook and YouTube to the degree that they'll let us get away with showing this interview even.
Yeah.
But in any event, the only way that you can get to be certain that people get to see the actual truth, including yourself, if you're watching this, is to go to this link. You can see it on the screen right below us right now. It's also embedded, so you can just click on a button. But if you do that and then copy that URL and email it to your friends, that still seems to be about the only thing that they can't stop these days.
Right. Right, and I'm sure they're going to try. I'm sure they're going.
Oh yeah, they're going to try.
Yeah, they're going to try. And I was joking. It's like, and I'm not really joking. This is what's sad. I'm actually kind of afraid of what happens when we release the film. They may really be at my door on Thanksgiving and want some turkey or something.
Turkey dusted with gunpowder.
Right.
So, I guess I'll wrap up with this. I've been telling people who watch my channel and have for a while, I've been telling them that 10 years ago, I tried to look 10 years into the future and I thought, man, we're toast. And here we are 10 years later and we're toast.
Yeah.
But when I look at 10 years in the future now, I think we're going to be okay. I think we're past peak woke. I think people everywhere are literally awakening as opposed to awokening. They're going to these school board meetings. They're fighting back in the pop culture. They're fighting back everywhere. And I genuinely believe that these kind of things like what you're doing now are not only going to succeed, but that they're succeeding. The president, asterisk,
Right.
has historic low approval ratings. So does the vice president. Everything they touch is a debacle. There's not only now they're saying, you don't really need turkey for Thanksgiving just because it cost almost double what it did last year. Just why don't you just go back to your algae cakes? and all across the country, people are waking up to the fact that this isn't about Republicans versus Democrats, not about conservatives or progressives at all. It's about a ruling elite that has decided that it knows what's better for you than you do. And it really is a case of the government, in cooperation with big media and big tech and all the rest of it, have decided that they're going to tell you what to do. And I think that the pushback is now really only now starting to begin. Do you get that sense?
I absolutely do. And, like you said, that you mentioned the school board meetings that people are going to and making projects like this one. I think that's the way to fight back. As more people stand up and say, this doesn't make sense and I'm not doing what you say and I don't accept your characterization of me. And the more we stand up and say no to these bullies, that's what bullies do. They run away. They try to scare you, and until you're not scared anymore, and once they sense you're not scared anymore, they run away. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think I think you're right. I think more and more people are waking up, and we're going to make the bullies run away.
So, is there anything that you want to say in terms of what people can do, or is there anything that I missed, or you have any closing thoughts on this this remarkable work that you've done?
Well, I just want to assure everybody out there that this is not only an informative and kind of groundbreaking film. You're going to see things in this movie you couldn't imagine were happening in America. There's also some really good jokes in it. And, I'm proud of those. There's a lot of funny stuff in it, and it's, not always inappropriate. Some of it is, but I encourage everybody to have fun with this movie. I mean, what I'm trying to say, this movie's, even though there's some bad,
it's not oral. It's not 2 hours of oral surgery that you have to sit through. And
it's not like a plane going down. This movie, there's some there's some fun stuff in it as well.
I'm really glad you mentioned that in closing, because we really do write our own futures in a lot of ways. In the days and months after the election and after January 6th and into the spring and so on, I and most Americans were utterly convinced that we would never, ever win another election again, that this woke offensive that launched this sneak attack and then just kept rolling like the first 6 months of the war in the Pacific, where the Japanese, everywhere they go, they're just victorious, victorious, victorious. We're falling back and we're looking around and saying, we've lost this thing, it's over, and there's no stopping them.
Yeah.
There is stopping them. Mm-hmm. And they actually stop pretty easily. And the thing that I like to leave people with is that everything that the left has done to destroy this country, they have done through psychology, and we have allowed them to do it. What I mean by that is they don't come at us and knock down doors with machine guns, despite what the FBI's ambitions might be in the near future. And it pains me to have to say that. But the fact of the matter is, all of it is accomplished by making you shut up, by calling you something that you find reprehensible, that you don't want to be known as. You're slandered and you're intimidated and you're bullied, and you see everywhere, you see people just bow down, and the NFL and Gillette and all these other people just taking a knee. But when you stand up and make a determined effort to resist this, I am astonished at how easy it is and how rapidly these miserable sons of bitches run away.
That's true. Absolutely true. And, that's why I make jokes in the movie. It's like ridiculing the left really, really gets them. They really hate that. They cannot stand to be made fun of. And
they cannot.
And you've done it forever. I mean, that's why we're friends, the stuff you've done, ridiculing them. I mean, that's some of the most delicious parts of the movie, is just being able to laugh in their faces. They really, really hate that.
They do hate it, and now they have their nuclear weapon, which is racist,
Yeah.
and now we have ours, which is
Moron.
where did you get that haircut, man?
Right.
My
Right.
God,
Yeah.
have you ever ironed clothes in your life? Never? I'm not surprised.
Right.
Nick, it's a pleasure talking to you, and I've always admired you, and always admired your sense of humor and your patriotism. But when I saw that you'd gone to the kind of effort you'd gone to, I just knew I was on the right team. And thanks for coming to talk about it. We'll promote this to the limit of our ability, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the whole film on Thanksgiving morning. And I think ultimately, that's something for us to give thanks about, despite the fact that things have deteriorated as much as they have. Right. Here is an actual film, an actual statement criticizing the government, and it's up there and they can't stop it. Mm-hmm. And it's as free of a country as we decide to make it.
That's exactly right. And you and I and others like us, we're doing what our friend Andrew Breitbart told us to do.
Yeah.
We're trying to affect the culture by participating in it. So.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure talking with you, pal. It's been too long since we met in person. I've got a secret weapon project of my own that I will send you a link to.
Okay.
And I'm hoping I can corral you into working with me on that, because you're right, they cannot handle being laughed at.
Right.
Nick Searcy, ladies and gentlemen, his new film is called Capital Punishment. It becomes available for you to view online on Thanksgiving. And you really need to see this film. We'll continue to run the trailers here leading up to that and for several days after. It's great talking to you, Nick, and I miss hanging out with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon.
I hope so, Bill. Let's do it.
All right, pal. Take care.
Bye.